Welcome to this explainer. Today we are diving straight into a seriously intense courtroom standoff over the sentencing date for convicted murderer Kouri Richins. If you've been following this tragic case, you already know it's this incredibly complex web of evidence, and honestly, the post-trial legal maneuvering has turned out to be just as dramatic as the trial itself. So we're going to break down the whole timeline, the fierce arguments from both sides, and the judge's final definitive ruling. Okay, let's just get right to the core question here. Why deny a sentencing delay? I mean, on paper, it sounds like a totally standard procedural request, right? Just move a date on a calendar. But in the legal world, especially in a massive case like this, timing is literally everything. We're going to explore exactly why a judge firmly and honestly quite systematically rejected a convicted murderer's desperate request for more time before learning her fate. Because as you'll see, this was about so much more than just coordinating schedules. To really grasp this ruling, let's take a quick look at the timeline. It all started with the tragic fentanyl poisoning back in March 2022. Fast forward to March 2026, and a jury convicts her. Then, almost immediately after, in April, her defense team requests a delay for the scheduled May 2026 sentencing. This basically gave the defense a 2-month gap between the conviction and the sentencing, and that became the ultimate battleground. 5. That is a number that carries immense weight here. On March 16th, after a 2-week trial and just about 3 hours of deliberation, a jury found Kouri Richins guilty of 5 distinct felony charges. We're talking aggravated murder and attempted homicide. Jurors actually determined she didn't just cause Eric's death, but had actively tried to kill him weeks earlier on Valentine's Day. Throw in 2 counts of insurance fraud and a forgery conviction, and well, when we talk about her sentencing, we are talking about the culmination of 5 incredibly severe felonies. And that leads us right into the number 25. The stakes for this upcoming hearing are absolutely massive. Because prosecutors aren't seeking the death penalty, Kouri's facing a minimum of 25 years to life behind bars. The absolute critical variable here is whether she's going to be granted the possibility of parole. This one singular hearing is going to determine the rest of her natural life. So you can see why her defense team was fighting tooth and nail for every single extra day to prepare. Now, this brings us to a term you hear a lot in these cases: mitigation. Basically, what is that? Well, it's any information or evidence presented to the judge to basically say, hey, maybe we can lessen the severity of this punishment. In Kouri's case, her defense team's main reason for wanting a delay until June was to gather more of this mitigation evidence. They wanted more time to dig in, do their research, and prepare witnesses who might be able to sway the judge toward 25 years with the possibility of parole rather than a strict life sentence without it. So, on April 13th, the defense formally asks for a delay, and they cited some real logistical hurdles. Beyond just generally needing more time to prep that mitigation evidence, they pointed to some serious personal and professional conflicts. There had been a recent death in defense attorney Kathy Nestor's family. On top of that, another key attorney on the team, Alexander Ramos, was completely double-booked, scheduled for an entirely separate trial on the exact same day as the May 13th sentencing. They basically argued, look, we just don't have the time to get this right. You can imagine the tension, right? This sets up a total standoff in the courtroom. You've got the defense pleading for some logistical breathing room because of genuine tragedies and scheduling nightmares. But fiercely pushing back on the other side is the prosecution. The state pointed out that Eric Richins' family members had already arranged time off work specifically for this May 13th date. Plus, the clack for any future appeals is legally tied to the sentencing date. Actually, to the prosecution, granting a delay wasn't about fairness at all. It was purely about stalling. And let me tell you, the prosecution did not hold back, not even a little. They filed a public response that actively called out the defense, stating, "For 3 years, Eric Richins' family has painfully and patiently stood by as the defendant has manufactured one reason after another to delay this proceeding." They basically told the judge, hey, we've let them dictate the schedule every single time up until now, and argued there was absolutely no justifiable reason for the victim's family to endure any more waiting. Okay, here's where things get kind of wild. Let's call this the birthday revelation. The prosecution introduced this fascinating piece of context. According to their filings, the day after the initial sentencing date was set, Kouri's aunt asked her if she realized the sentencing fell on her deceased husband's birthday. Kouri allegedly responded that she immediately told her attorney to reschedule it for the end of May. What makes that so crazy is that she said this weeks before the official motion citing attorney scheduling conflicts was ever even filed. It really cast a massive shadow over the defense's true motives for wanting to move the date. So put yourself in the judge's shoes. With the defense citing complex logistics and family tragedies on one hand, and the prosecution yelling about stalling tactics and suspicious timelines on the other, the whole thing landed squarely on the desk of 3rd District Court Judge Richard Mrazik. How in the world do you balance a defendant's right to present a thorough defense against a victim's family's right to finally get some closure? Well, here's the bottom line. Judge Mrazik did not mince words. Motion denied. He confirmed the sentencing is going to happen exactly as scheduled on May 13th. No delays, no moving it to June. But since we really want to dig into the details in this explainer, we don't just want to know what he decided, we want to understand why. He systematically took apart the defense's arguments piece by piece. First, he pointed out that Kouri actually waived her right to be sentenced within 5 days of conviction, which gave them almost 2 months. He deemed that plenty of time. Second, he noted the defense never actually specified what specific mitigation work was left to do. Third, even with one attorney busy, she still had 2 other highly qualified lawyers ready to go. And finally, to completely shut down any excuse about a rushed hearing, the judge announced he had cleared his entire schedule for May 13th to make sure everyone had all the time they needed to be heard. But honestly, the true anchor of the judge's decision, it came from something the public didn't even get to read in full. Judge Mrazik specifically pointed to an unredacted version of the prosecution's court filing. According to him, this document provided compelling detail regarding the minor victims. He's talking about the 3 young sons Kouri and Eric Richins shared. The judge elaborated on this with a genuinely powerful statement. He wrote that the children would endure significant prejudice if the sentencing hearing is continued beyond its current setting. Now, when a judge throws around a term like significant prejudice regarding minors, they are acknowledging real, tangible psychological and emotional harm being caused by a dragged-out legal process. Mrazik made it crystal clear. Protecting those kids from any further trauma was his absolute top priority. To really cement this decision, the judge pointed straight to Utah state law. Yes, the law allows a defendant the chance to present mitigation info, but it also heavily protects victims. In Utah, victims have a legal right to a speedy disposition of the charges free from unwarranted delay caused by defendant. So the judge essentially ruled that the defense's excuses just weren't strong enough to override the family's legal right to wrap this up. In all of this, it brings an incredibly heavy, almost unbelievable irony to the final date on the calendar. 44. That is the exact age Eric Richins would have turned on that very day. The day Kouri Richins finds out if she's spending the rest of her natural life in a cell or if she'll ever be eligible for parole is happening on her murdered husband's 44th birthday. It's a detail that just adds this undeniable, heavy emotional weight to the whole proceeding. So, as all this legal maneuvering finally wraps up and the date is locked in stone, we really have to look at the bigger picture here. We have to ask, is this upcoming May 13th sentencing finally going to bring a conclusion to this tragic saga? After 3 years of pain, endless investigations and trials, will the final strike of that gavel bring the closure the Richins family and especially those 3 young boys so desperately need? It's a question only time and Judge Mrazik's final sentence can answer.